Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Filmmakers Live, where we introduce you to filmmakers who are building a fabulous career. And we ask them a lot of questions so that you too can build your fabulous filmmaking career. And my name is Joanne Butcher. I am a business coach and film producer and fundraising goddess. Goddess, meaning fundraising is my thing, is my superpower. I have a book here that I published called Getting Your Film Funded, Produced, and Distributed. And everybody who knows me knows that what I focus on is the business and the money side of things. And then when I introduce you all to a filmmaker, then we focus on those things, but really on how they're building a fabulous career. So I want you all today to meet Marco Molinet, who I've known now for many years.
Yes, many years.
Back to Miami. And I saw you recently at the South Florida Film Forum, which was super fun. I know you were one of the organizers of that as well.
It was a cool event.
Yes, it was.
Nice.
And but the first question that I always like to ask my guests is this, which is, when did you first know you were a filmmaker?
So in college, right out of college, I was a manager of a radio station, and I also had a big crew of friends, and we did a bunch of events and parties, and we owned a bunch of companies together, and it was called the Tallahassee Hot Boys. I went to Florida A&M in Tallahassee, right? School of Business. And in that whole workup of things, the radio station I used to manage was a Black-owned radio station that got bought out. And we loved the media, and we loved the power and the reach of media. So one of my great friends was a film student at Florida State University. And we had access to so much talent, and we were always on the scene. So we started a TV show called Jam TV, which was a hip hop and R&B video show where we would interview one of these big celebrities that were friends of ours, like Chris Brown or T-Pain or Neo, whoever.
Wow.
And we'd play their favorite videos. This is way, way back, it's like 20 years ago. It's like 20 plus years ago, right?
Right.
So we would do this, and it was the #1 TV show in North Florida, South Georgia. And from there, I ended up going on tour with T-Pain and doing a bunch of other things. And when I went into the music, that drove me more into the music industry. So then I knew I had a love and a passion for being able to manage the narrative and tell the stories that I didn't, even though the TV show wasn't, I learned while doing that how you can shape and make sure that things come out a certain way and have a certain momentum and a certain feel to them. So I wanted to get more into narrative. And when I came back to Miami, I got into narrative with my partner, Blah G, and we created Florida Film House, knowing we wanted to shoot movies, but also knowing that we didn't have the capital to do it. So we started our production company on the back of all the relationships we had from the music.
Wait. I have to stop here because I always interrupt. And I'm like, can we just go back?
Okay.
Just go back a little bit, because you were talking about the radio show right after college. Then you dropped a bunch of names, Chris Brown. Sounds like you were super young when you were working with all these famous musicians. How did you manage to do that?
We were all young. Like they were younger than me.
Yeah, right.
We were all like, like I was fresh out of college. They were like still like teenagers, 18, 19. Right. So basically I was part of T-Pain's Nappy Boy. Like I helped, work with Nappy Boy and manage a lot of the talent and part of the management team. So, he was one of the hottest things under the sun. So therefore everybody was around us and with us. Right. So we had access to all this amazing talent, and we were working with all these phenomenal people. We were very young. We were learning a lot as we went. Great relationships that have lasted the time, test of time. And a lot of that stuff helped us even get, like I was saying, get into the film industry, because those are the same people that I end up shooting all their music videos and taking that money and flipping it into our films.
Right. So that's really interesting. So in a way, would you say as a filmmaker that you are one of the filmmakers that came out of music video? Would you say that is true about yourself? Because there are a few directors that's really the path that they came.
Well, I would say more. I already was in. I was in film and chose music to fund my
I see.
film. So it's a
Yes,
little bit different. It wasn't
yes,
like
yes.
something where I was like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a, because I'm more of a producer also, right? So I already knew that I can grab Pitbull's video and make 30,000. I can grab this video and we can make 20, and then we can piece them all together, and then we have 150,000 to shoot a movie.
Right. Yes,
Right.
yes.
So that's what we did. We just started working like crazy on everybody's content, getting the money, buying the resources. Back then I had the grip truck and the
Right.
lights and all the kind of stuff you had to have to shoot a movie, red cameras and all that stuff. We had to, slowly but surely we kept purchasing all these items, lenses, specific tripods, all kinds of stuff that we
Yes.
could underwrite our own costs and shoot our own films.
Right. Very nice. Very nice. And then another thing I want to go back to is I was really taken aback when you said I wanted to manage the narrative. And I
Right.
wonder what do you mean by that phrase? That's a really, really great phrase. What do you mean by managing the narrative?
Okay, so I come from a faith-based family, very philanthropy, giving back type of family. Like everybody, grandmas, great grandma, mom, my whole
Wow.
family's like that, right?
Really?
So yeah, so and then like a lot of the people in my family, I would say like a lion's share of people in my family are either pastors, deacons, or deaconettes, right? There's nobody in my family that's like not religious, right? I come from a very
And
religious.
nobody in your family who's sitting on the sidelines, it sounds like.
Right. So with that being said, I knew that for one, I wanted to give back, right? And I wanted to be able to tell stories of people that couldn't speak for themselves or stories that had not come out that I thought were important. Like I want to make movies that are going to motivate, educate, inspire, guide, teach people how to understand people better, help close gaps, communicate, like just different things. So I knew that in film you can do that, right? And I didn't want to be a hardcore, like say, pastor, right? So I figured I'll shoot faith-based content and I'll be able to reach the masses. So this filled a couple different voids for me and also allowed me to, be creative and work with a bunch of creatives. And also I had a couple of interactions in the music business that really taught me how important that was. I would come to some of the executives with songs that T-Pain or other artists had made that I thought were phenomenal and very important for the culture and for the needs of the time. And they would tell me, no, Marco, that's not the kind of music we're making, and they throw different slurs out there that I felt were just ridiculous. And I'm like, hold up. So you want to make this corny music, you want to make music about drinking and partying and strip clubs and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And that's what you guys want to push, but you won't push a song called Save the World.
Right.
Right. And it's like, and this is such a beautiful song. They're like, he doesn't make that type of music. He's not Stevie Wonder. He's, and they put you in these little boxes and they control you in that box and they control the narrative of the music. Right. So the only way you're going to control the narrative is if you own the narrative.
Yes.
And the music industry is really, at least back then, was very difficult to control the narrative. So in film, you can control the narrative and just work your way up.
Well, so I had a feeling that maybe you were meaning this kind of thing when you said about managing the narrative, because I think particularly in America, it may be the same in other places, but I find in America, racism takes on a whole level that's like, whoa. And so the narrative about African Americans in this country is, disturbing.
Right.
And it's been going for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So managing the narrative and, making films that are about these important topics, like Save the World, right? Save the World is a really good topic to pick. And having that narrative, I feel, is the one that we're missing in our culture. We're missing that narrative ever since what was it, the debate, you know, when Trump came out and said Haitians are eating cats and dogs. I've
Yeah.
hung up on my wall, right? It's just like, you know, the narrative that's to this day being created, that's filled with
Right. Right.
hatred, is just, you know, it's just the
Right.
same old, right?
Right.
But to, you know, for us to take control of that narrative, there's two things. One is we need to know that that narrative is important, and secondly, financially, because you said, well, it was difficult to control the narrative in the music world, but you can in the film world. But I would argue you only can if you're financing your own films,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
because otherwise you're back to the same thing.
Right.
I was working on a project with a friend of mine, a colleague of mine. Well, when I first met him, he's actually Trinidadian like me, but he lives in England, and he was trying to make a series based on this novel, Jamaican novel about Jamaican history. And he had gone through some pretty big companies that were interested in making it, and none of them would agree to have a Jamaican in the writer's room.
Mm.
Like, just right there.
I mean, how does that even make sense?
But
When
that's
it's,
the way it is.
it's like, okay, you know, and once again, they're trying to control the narrative, right? So this is
Right.
where, you know, this is where we are. We're still fighting this battle. We're going to continue to have to fight this battle. But you
Yes.
know, as I like, that's you know, that's the basis behind everything that I do. You know, we
Yes.
talk about the youth program. We'll talk about the film festival. All these are to empower, motivate, educate, and inspire the next generation of filmmakers. Because like I
Yeah.
tell people, I might not be the one that strikes the match, but hopefully I inspire, educate, or put somebody in power to do that, and maybe they strike the match that helps guide people in the right direction, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and you know, everybody's all excited. Like this movie Sinners, for instance, you know, it's phenomenal movie Sinners, you know, but even like not even just the big blockbuster hits, but there's like a series on Netflix right now called Forever, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Okay. Writing it down. Writing it down.
right. And it's a beautiful series about just a young couple that fall in love and all their trials and tribulations they have to go through to, you know, just, you know, to be together forever or not forever. We'll see.
Uh-huh.
Right. But we're just going through their journey, and it happens to be, you know, a young black couple, but it's not even about that they're black. It doesn't matter that they happen to be black. It's just they're a young, beautiful, loving couple. Happens to be black, and they're showing a lot of the black experience and the culture through the content. But that's the type of content that's general market content,
Yeah.
but still hits those issues and
Yeah.
still, you know, inspires, educates, and you know, and especially educates the general market on the similarities between just people. We're all just people, you know, and then it also educates them on some of the fears and concerns that those people have that they might not be aware of, or they might think that it helps them understand. Like, okay, for instance, one of the talents, he's a young black male. He just got a vehicle, and his mom is scared from the drive at night because of the police. And it shows the conversation that we have with our children that other people are not privy to and understand the fears. These are real fears, right?
Right.
And it's unfortunate that we have to have these fears. And then they see the kid about to get pulled over, and the kid literally start panicking almost because he's scared and how something can easily happen when this happens, right? So it's just very educational in that aspect, and nothing even happens. They don't even show anything happen. The cop speeds past them, or something, but it was just that moment enough to just educate the general masses on this is a real thing that you
That's
guys don't have to work. You know, so it's like little things like that that you put into your content. So important.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not a little thing. That's a really big thing.
Right.
Um, but I think that a
They
lot of
made it. They made it like seem like it because they didn't emphasize on it. They
right,
just kind of put it there,
right,
but
right.
like just to note it. You know.
Yes, yes.
Beautifully done. Beautifully
And
done.
those are the kind of details that make for great content, right? That those details make for great stories. You know, I'm always interested when I get a new client and I read their script, and I say, well, you know, it's very generic, you know, and which that's not a very nice thing to say.
Right.
Be nice to my client, but you know, I'm like, well, this is a town. Is it a town? Is it a suburb? Is it a rural town? Is it a, and I just got a new client and I'm reading this beautiful script. And from page 1 or 2, I know I'm in this tiny little town in Florida. It's on the coast. Traditionally, they've been fishing. And the pastor, who's the main character in this church, has lost his church because of, we don't know what yet. But all of that specificity, that's what makes for great writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I gave that example of they didn't want a Jamaican in the writer's room, the only way you can write without the Jamaican in the writer's room is in a way that is generic. You can't have the granular reality, detail, the specificity that makes for great films and great television.
Exactly. My mother-in-law just walked in here and brought a box of Fasco, right? The cereal. And she's like, oh, you know, telling my wife basically, you become Americanized. You don't have Fasco in your house, right? And I'm like, okay, but why is there? It's a Jamaican flag on it with a little white kid on it, right? Like, why is they got the little white kid on there, right? And it's like that's just the tradition. That's the box. That's the box, right?
Right.
Box. But once again, if a Jamaican's in the room and they're writing about somebody making cereal, they're gonna have that box possibly in the scene. Yes. And if you don't, then you might have the cornflakes, just regular cornflakes in the scene. You know? So it's like the little details, like you're saying. You know?
And those details are what we all relate to. So you have that detail, but you don't have to be Jamaican to appreciate that detail. It's the detail, it's the specificity that we appreciate.
Right.
We know what it is or not. It doesn't make any difference.
Absolutely.
And so important to great storytelling. So I went all the way back, but managing the narrative, I really like that phrase. And so you were making music videos, you were getting your production company going. What was it that brought you to making your first feature film? And maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but
no, that's fine. I mean, no, basically from the very beginning,
yes,
me and my partner partnering up,
yes,
we wanted to do movies.
Yes.
We went out and so, you know, I told him, I was like, listen, nobody's going to give us money because we don't have a proven business model.
Right.
Right. So therefore we have to go out and shoot our first film off of us.
Right.
He's like, nah, Marco, people get money all the time. We just got to go ask them. I said, okay. So I created a business plan, you know, all the bells and whistles. I went and got, you know, comparatives and, you know, try to make it, you know, seem like as if we knew what we were talking about. All right. And I went out and I asked whatever, say like 50 people I knew that could help us if they would. And all 50 of them said, but you've never done it. I was like, I agree. You know, like, I agree. This is how are you going to make the money back if you've never done it? I said, this is what people say we're going to do. I'm thinking this could work. This is my game plan. I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and tell them, oh, I'm going to get them. I said, I don't know. I really don't know. We're going to go through this together. We're going to see how it goes, right?
I would say 50% of the filmmakers do what you did. They prepare all of that and then they fake it.
Yeah.
That they're like, you know, and then I'll say, well, but how are you clear for your investor? And they're like, well, you know, I have passion and I'm going to make this happen. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. So make a long story short, we, you know, after we asked everybody and everybody politely said, look, Marco, we love you. We're big fans. Wish you the best, but we're not going to let our money be the guinea pig, right? So what we will do though is we'll be with you and we'll, you know, when you guys do figure out the business model, come see us after that, right? So of course we end up having to go back to, you know, raising the money up ourselves. We shot our first feature. And then even then, I didn't know how to distribute. So I went to, you know, the American film market. I went to the European film market. I went to Cannes. I went to MIP. I went to all the different places where you learn how to do this.
Uh-huh.
and I was getting educated on it, and I was actually doing deals, and I was figuring things out. And there was one company in particular that was at all these that I saw that I felt really good about. And then I also brought in a friend of mine's that used to be director of distribution for Buena Vista Worldwide, which is Disney, right? So this guy distributed Lion King, Pulp Fiction. I mean, massive films, right? So he's like the guy. So I brought him in as my consultant. So I figured I'd done my research. I have a consultant, right? And then he went with me the next year to Berlin as well. We met with the company I felt most confident about. He also felt confident about it, right? I had another consultant that was another friend of mine that was there who told me not to. He said, Marco, these people are not going to do right by you. Don't do it. You know what I'm saying? Figure out something else, right? But the other guy that was director of this, so make a long story short, I go with this big company. I got jerked, never got $1 back. Took an L, c'est la vie, right? Took my shit.
Do you mind if we stop here for a little bit?
Sure.
If you're totally traumatized, let me know. We won't talk about it.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I moved on.
Yes. So, but there's a lot of lessons right here. And so one thing I heard you say was I went to AFM, EFM, Cannes, film markets, to learn. And I feel as though, well, I know when I'm working with my clients, I want them to learn from me, and then
Right.
then they can go and have an experience somewhere else. But then the other thing was the consultant who had worked for Buena Vista. What I see is that people who understand the studio model don't know anything about the micro budget model. Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Even the fact that I ran a 79-seat cinema, and we were a first-run cinema, and we lied to the distributors that we had 100 seats because the minimum for a first-run film is 100 seats. But we told them these were actually we had 79.
Right.
And we were often sold out, but nobody seemed to notice that we sold 79 tickets for all of our shows. But so even the level that I was working at with various distribution companies that were the smaller, the more independent distribution companies, Cowboy Pictures, they don't exist anymore, I don't think.
I remember Cowboy Pictures though.
You do, yeah. Lionsgate, that even that model, even running a 79-seat theater, the distributors I worked with and everything, they would never have been able to help me with a micro budget film.
Right.
I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
Totally different business model. You're one of the very rare filmmakers I know who uses the term business model.
Right. Well, I went to school of business, so I mean, I come from business, and I agree. Everything you're saying is correct. I mean, basically, my consultant was not an understanding of where the direction and the space I needed to be in.
Yes.
I should have had a consultant that specialized in that space.
Yes.
Right? Even my friend that told me not to.
Yes.
He was into buying media companies and putting them together and selling them. So it wasn't his space, but he just knew enough about business to be like, Marco, these guys aren't going to, this is not it. Right. He couldn't tell me which direction to go. He just told me, don't do this.
He said, don't do this. But I hear a lot because you were taking all these actions, but they're the actions that I hear a lot of filmmakers take that don't work. So I hear a lot of people will say things like, well, I have a producer on my film from Netflix.
Right. So
have they ever raised any money?
Right.
I already know the answer. It's no.
No. They never had to.
Have they ever had to sell a film? No. So they don't know anything. Right. But yes, they produce for Netflix. If they produce for Netflix, they're getting a paycheck every week. Are you getting a paycheck every week? I don't think so. You know,
I have a great friend of mine. He's probably one of the most successful, one of the biggest agents and film executives in the industry, right? A good friend of mine. And when I speak to him about my business model, what I'm doing, he's like, I love what you're doing, Marco. You need to get you need to level up now. It's time to level up, because you might be 2xing and 3xing your money right now, right? Which is phenomenal. But the amount of energy you're putting into 2xing and 3xing a movie that you shoot for under $500,000 or $250,000, if you shot a theatrical release for $1.5, $3 million and you 2x or 3x, now you're in a different ballpark. And I said, I agree with you. It's just I have to grow to that. I'm growing to that. I'm going the way that I can manage the situation.
That's right.
Right. I can't afford to take a $1.5 million L.
No,
right?
That's right.
So when I go into a business arrangement, which a film is, I always look at it from the perspective of an investor, because I've always invested in my films for one.
Yeah.
I've always invested in everything I've ever done in life for two. And for some reason, if I was to take a $1.5 million L, whether it's my money or somebody else's money, that still has to be paid back some shape, fashion, or form. Even though I know a lot of people structure their deals differently, to me, that's just business, right? You can't lose somebody's $1.5 million and tell them I'm sorry. That doesn't work like that, right?
No.
So,
I totally agree with you. And what I talk about a lot is that when you're around filmmakers all the time, like we were at South Florida Film Forum, there's like hundreds of filmmakers there, right? And I always say, truthfully, most filmmakers are just talking. And the easiest thing to do is to say to somebody, hey, that $500,000 film you made, why don't you make a $1.5 million movie? It's the easiest thing to say. It doesn't cost anything.
Right.
A cup of coffee costs more than that. But it's easy to say things. Right. But again, and it happens to my clients a lot, because when they start working with me and they start taking off with their film or raising money, whatever it is, people suddenly want to jump on board, right? The train has left the station, people want to jump on board.
Right.
And they start telling me, well, so-and-so said this and so-and-so, and I'm like, you have to be so careful about who you're talking to. So that person who says, make a $1.5 million movie, number one question is, have you ever raised money for a film? That's the number one question. Nearly every time it's going to be no.
Right.
They've never been through what you've been through. They've never put that money together and made a film and put it out. And
now I can tell you this, luckily for me, what this gentleman has done is he's put me in position now. So first what he did was he recommended, and then secondly, he said, okay, I'm going to have you work with filmmakers. Because the problem with studio now is that so the film industry is coming back to independent in a very, like a lot of the majority of films in the future will be shot independently, but still with A-list talent, right? So there'll be theatrical releases, but they'll have to be shot at 5 million or less so that the studio or the partner is comfortable moving forward with the theatrical release marketing budget, knowing that they're only getting back, say 40 to 45% from the box office to get back to the black, right? So the mentality of independent filmmakers is the mentality that's going to save this medium possibly, right? But they still want it. So the studio filmmakers, they can't fathom the idea of shooting a movie sometimes at that cost point.
Less than $5 million.
Right. So now a lot of my friends that are in studio, he has me working with different filmmakers that have that $20 million mentality, but now you have to work with Marco, and you have to do it with 3 million, and he's going to show you how to do it from a producing standpoint. He's going to line produce it. He's going to work with the AD, schedule it all out, and then we're going to put the talent on top and make it all fit in the number. Even if we have to negotiate with the talent with points and so on and so forth, we're going to make it fit in the number so that we can actually take this to box office at under 5 million. They put the 5 on marketing, and then we know our break even is this point where we know we can hit with just this guaranteed market. That's where we're going. So now him having me work with filmmakers that have been successful in this business model, which is the business model I need to get to, has showed me, okay, how to raise the money, like you're saying, how to raise the money, how to get to that point, and how to move in that direction. Now, once I get there, then I can reach back and say, okay, I know a couple of young filmmakers or young producers that can help this happen as well. and I'll start pulling as many along as I can, and then. But I do think that the future of the majority of films taken to theaters, there'll always be the Marvels and the big ones, right? The big brands that they keep redoing. New Mission Impossible, new this, new that, right? New franchises that are created like Sinners, right? That'll come around every now and then, right? But it's going to be a lot of, I think, bigger art house films, and that's where it could be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I've seen, I haven't articulated it the way you are, but a couple of things that I saw. One was during the SAG strike. And there were actors I know who were like, I'm not working, I'm not going to, cross the picket line. But SAG came out and said, we want our actors out there working. They said, work with independent producers, come on board maybe as a producer, and go out there and make movies. So the union was saying, go out and make independent movies. They were not striking against independent filmmakers. They were striking against Netflix. Right. So that was one thing. And then the other thing, I just wanted to say how one time I was speaking at a film festival when I still lived in California, really good film festival. And the festival director said, yes, because I really want to hear you talk, Joanne, about how can anybody make a film for less than $5 million?
Yeah, LA doesn't get it. They don't get it. I mean, they're so locked up in the whole studio union thing. The thing is, like I tell people, South Florida is a special place right now because of the non-union. How you can, we film non-union. So like that 30% tax incentive that everybody's going crazy for in other places. Well, when you film union, the union's going to cost you about 28 to 38% on the front end anyways.
Yes.
So you're shooting in South Florida, and the only union you have to deal with is SAG for talent, right? And SAG even allows you to carve out your A's or your, not A's, but say you have like your B-list talent. You don't have to do the whole entire cast.
Right. No, you don't.
So you can still shoot independent, bring in your big SAG actors, your one or two SAG actors. Your rest of your talent is local or whatever, up and comers or whatever. So you have your people you can sell, and you're still shooting it at much less than you would have shot it anywhere else because it's non-union.
Mm-hmm.
See, with all due respect, I'm one of these guys that I'm a fan of the pluses behind the unions, but I'm not a big fan of the stipulations behind the unions, right? So therefore, I decided not to be a PGA. I've decided not to work with DGA directors because I don't want to deal with the unions, right? And it saves me the money I need to save to guarantee my profits, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm not knocking anybody that does union. I'm not knocking the union.
Right.
Everything has a place and a time for where it's needed. But in Florida, it's a huge plus for us to be able to shoot non-union.
Yeah, I love that argument. And I think that whatever business model works, right? To me, the business model has to be the priority, right? And if it doesn't make sense business-wise, it doesn't matter to me what the budget is. It could be 300,000, it could be 1.5 million, but it doesn't make any difference. It has to have a business model that works. And this is one of the things that I think that I spend a lot of time working with filmmakers on, because it's not something that they've ever really thought about before. They're thinking about other things. They're thinking about the story. They're thinking about the actors, all the things they should be thinking about, right? They're not thinking about the business model. And to me, there's always a business model that works.
Absolutely.
Whatever budget we're talking about. If we want to make a 50 million, somebody called me the other day. She said, do you have any $50 million films? Like, not today, but I can find one, but, if we're going to make a Denzel Washington film, we can make a $50 million film.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a business model that works. It just has Denzel Washington in it, or it's Marvel IP or something, but there's always a business model that works. And where filmmakers, I think, fall down is that they're using business models that don't work.
Right. Like a lot of people look at, for instance, Sinners was phenomenal, is doing phenomenal. I love the success of it. Yep. But people don't realize that it just made it to the black.
Mm.
It was shot for 90 to $100 million.
Mm.
So that means it has to do 300 plus to get just
Right.
back to the black,
Yes,
right?
yes,
In
yes.
box office, right? So the thing is that it's successful, but then you look at, say, Get Out, which made $250,000 in box office, but it was shot for $4.5 million. That is success. You know, with all due respect, I mean, I'm a huge. I understand they're different filmmakers and they have different reasons for what they're doing. I know, but at the end of the day, when you're in the business side of it, you're looking at the 4.5 million. Where you're in the creative side of it, you're looking at the 100 million, right? Because
I would say those are different things though, because Get Out was well, it wasn't actually the first time they'd made Keanu, but first time director, really, Jordan Peele,
right,
as opposed to master director, Ryan Coogler. But to me, it's still about the business model. And Get Out was a Blumhouse movie, and they know what their business model is. They have no confusion about what their business.
right,
They're not going to change their business model.
true.
This is our business model. So they fit Jordan Peele into their business model rather than, I would say, Sinners is just a completely different business model.
It is.
At a different stage in a filmmaker's career, all those kind of things. But I get your point. You're saying, well, you have to get this much money to be, but I'm not worried about Sinners.
Right. No. Sinners are going to go off to do half a billy, if not a billy.
That's right.
Yeah, they're going to make it back, and still they're going to kill it, right? It's going to be successful.
Yeah. The other thing though about Get Out and about Sinners is that people are going to be watching those films and paying money to watch those films in 40 years.
Yep.
So the long tail of films is one of the most exciting things about the economic viability of film is that long tail.
Absolutely.
Because it's never going to stop. I mean, I forget what platform it was, and I saw the movie Troy, and it means something to me because I happened to meet the guy who was in charge of the VFX on Troy. He had just finished it, and he was in Miami Beach to kind of rest because he was so exhausted. And he told me how bad the film was, and I've still never watched it.
Right.
But it's still making money.
Right.
15 years later, 20 years later, it's still making money.
Yeah.
So it might be a horrible film. I truly I've never been able to get myself the energy to actually watch it. So
I like the film. I like.
Oh yeah, okay.
The thing about these movies though is that once again, they're completely a different narrative than what really even happened though.
Oh, okay. What do you mean by that?
I mean, once upon a time, there was a group of people that came in and took over that territory, and a lot of those people were of Northern African descent.
That's right.
So, it's a good chance that, that army didn't look like Brad Pitt, with all due respect, right? So it's like one of those things where when you look at the stories and you're like Marcus Aurelius was of African descent. But when you look at Gladiator, he don't look African at all, right? He was actually of African and another ethnicity that was not of Caucasian descent, right? So it's like he definitely did not look like that, and none of them did, right? The what's the emperor's name? Emperor Cyrus or something like that, which was his father, was African. Right. And so when you see all these Greek mythology, the stories about Rome and all this stuff, the Roman Empire that was won and grown into this massive thing was done by Africans. But that's not the reality that's not the story we're going to put out. Right.
Well, and we're going to put it out.
I mean, people like, Ryan Coogler, people like Charles King,
like you, Marco.
People like me eventually. We will tell those stories, right? So the thing is that, and maybe my students, right? Yeah. So, my people from the film festival, right? So at the end of the day, you just have to grow and put yourself in position to be able, and see if Ryan Coogler shoots that movie, it's going to guarantee be $100
Yes,
million
that's
movie, right? And it's
yes,
going to look
yes.
phenomenal. It's going to change it's going to, it's going to motivate, educate, and inspire, like I like to say, so, these stories are all coming, and no matter how many, like, especially now today in the current world we're in, a lot of things are being, washed out again. We're going through this weird space right now. And, this time will be up and time will come back where art will prevail and stories will come out. And, everything that gets undone will get redone and celebrated again. We just have to,
Yes.
see it through. But,
To hold on.
yeah, exactly. But it's going to
Well,
be.
so I want to go back to my question, which was, so when, or not so much when, but so when you finally did make your feature film after having all the consultants and all the markets and all the things that were not really helping,
Right. Right.
how did you get to make your first feature film?
I mean, basically, we collected the money from the music videos and all the work we were doing, commercials, so on and so forth. During that time, I was building my company, trying to underwrite. I was putting myself in position to vertically integrate, where I was buying the gear and the crew and everything, building everything up, so that when I did go to shoot the movie, I'd be able to do it for less, right? So we did that, lost on the first one, but every film after that we've won, right? So now we're at
Lost. What do you mean by loss?
Financially lost. We lost. We gained in knowledge.
Yes.
We lost in money.
Because that has a lot of value.
It does.
Right. That already has a lot of value because, okay, was it really loss or was it closer to break even?
No, we never got $1 back from that movie.
Okay, so you
We lost. We completely. Yeah, I just got the movie back like a couple years ago and threw it on like Tubi and a bunch of AVODs and platforms and TVODs. And I got a check just like maybe I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 months ago for like, I don't know, like $30 or something. And we did like a big post about it. I was like, yo, we made $30 back so far from the movie. Hey, it's a celebration. We're not all the way in the, so it's like one of those things we're laughing about it because it does. But I mean, to me, it was like, master's class. That's what it is. It's like, you gotta look at it as education.
Absolutely.
And like I said, every movie from there out, we have made a profit now.
Yeah. So, but thank you for sharing that, because a lot of filmmakers don't want to share those kind of things, but it's just reality in a lot of people's cases. And I mean, I think people do better when they work with me, because we make sure that we don't use our own money, and we make sure that we don't go into debt, and we make sure a lot of things when we deliver the film. But most filmmakers don't know about raising money and things like that. But so by the time it came to the second film, what were the biggest lessons going into the second film that did make a profit? What were the biggest lessons that you learned from that first one?
Okay, so we had a very aggressive script on the first one with a lot of characters, right? Because once again, we didn't realize how expensive that would be. We had like a great story. We thought this would be so great. And we went out and just shot it. Right. And we were even shooting, and I was having to raise money while we were shooting, because we went over so I was having to raise money and pull credit cards and all kinds of craziness. So, but the second movie, from the writing perspective.
Can I just interrupt you? I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. That is such a common thing for first-time filmmakers. Mm-hmm. I bring it up with my clients all the time. I really hope that they come and listen to this. First-time filmmakers tend to write ensemble pieces. I don't know why, but they do, right? They write ensemble pieces, they have big casts. And then I ask them to run the script through a breakdown, platform, and just start counting. How many actors is this? How many days is it? How much money is that per day? How much does that add up to?
Right.
Combine. So I have a client right now making a film about this family. And there's this couple and that couple and this couple and that couple and this couple and that couple and this. And I said, could we combine some of those characters so that we can reduce the number of actors, reduce the number of locations? And it's really funny because a lot of times first-time filmmakers are not open to those kind of ideas, but they will be by the second movie.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I mean, that's exactly what we learned in the first one. So we went into the second one.
Yes.
We were able to write the movie in a perspective that was easier to shoot. We were
Uh-huh.
able to shoot it in minimal locations,
Right.
minimal characters,
Right.
focus on story development, focus on character development, understand what moves the needle. And
Yes.
then and then that allowed us to shoot it very cost effective
Right.
and put the money into marketing because we knew we were going to have to do self-distribution and monetize.
Right.
The
Okay.
business model improved.
Yes. And which film was that? Which was the second one?
Love and Reality.
Love of Reality. And where
And
can
it was actually a play as well. So we also did a play on it. The
right.
success of the play also allowed us to tweak the story a little bit and make fine tunes and see the talent development, take a lot of the talent from the play that was already ready for screen, and then go rent a mansion and start shooting the movie.
Right. And it's really interesting because when you were saying about the lesson learned from the first one and then reducing everything, but you said focus on the story development and the character development. And I find it a very common thing when I start to talk to filmmakers about doing that kind of, that they're resistant because they think that you're limiting my creativity.
You gotta be more creative.
Exactly the opposite.
Exactly. Like our first movie was a Miami love story, right? And I still to this day think that's a phenomenal film. It could have been a cult classic.
Uh-huh.
And maybe it'll pick up later on. It might be like one of those late bloomers, you know what I'm saying? But it was a million characters, a lot of different, like same thing like you're saying. We went through that same thing. Love and Reality is okay of a movie. It's actually my least favorite movie.
Okay.
Right? But it made money. And then Mr. Wrong was another movie we made that was shot quite similar to Love and Reality, but better. Right. Then we started shooting movies for other people.
Well, also the title I have to say is fantastic.
Yes.
Mr. Wrong. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And
Love and Reality, of course, Love and Reality was a play off Love and Hip Hop at the time. So that was the one. And then we have another one that we did called Fade Away that we shot for somebody else that got picked up by Sony. And then we shot multiple movies for other people, right?
Oh, okay.
But now the most recent one is The Reject, which is the one that's about the Keone McGee story, who's one of our commissioners.
Okay.
And that one right now, we're in heavy talks with SVOD companies across the board. And it's playing at ABFF next week in 2 different locations.
Really?
It's playing on Wednesday at O Cinema and Sunday at the Lyric Theater, right? So that's going to be a success, right? I think we're one of the only local feature films that got into ABFF.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't think I've ever seen a local feature film at ABFF.
Yes.
On Community Day I have, but not in the rest of the festival. I don't think so because I would have gone years ago.
Yeah, I remember my friend Malcolm Jones movie got in years ago.
Yeah.
That what was his movie called? It was like Magic City, I think it was called Magic City. That got in that was some years ago. But other than that, I don't know. You're right. I don't know.
Was that film from years ago with Maverick Entertainment?
I don't know who he did it with. It might have been.
Years ago. This was before I moved to San Francisco and all that. ABFF, I remember, and Maverick Entertainment had a big presence there. And I think we had a lot of hope about Miami-based filmmaking and urban filmmaking. And I don't think that's quite gone in the direction that we hoped, but that's what I remember from years ago.
That was one of the main reasons I launched the Urban Film Festival.
Okay.
We submitted a Miami Love Story, and we had another movie, Real Goons, that we did.
Real what? Oh, Real Goons.
Real Goons, right? That's out on AVOD too, all that stuff right now as well, right? So we submitted both of them. We thought both of them would one of them was sure going to get in Miami Love Story. So they didn't even. So they said nope to both of them, and I was like, "Jeez, all right." Right. So then I literally that was in June, and we launched because that's when I realized that, man, if we didn't get in, we have all this resources into our films. What about all the young people that are next generation? So
Yeah.
man, where are they airing? We entered into a lot of festivals. We didn't get in any of them, right? So we were like,
Oh, really?
there's a void here
Oh,
for urban content. There's a void.
right.
So in that June, I decided that September I was launching the Urban Film Festival,
Uh-huh.
and it was the 10th most submitted to film festival on Without a Box. Remember, we had Without a Box was besides Film Free was
Yes.
Without a Box.
Yes.
In the history of a first year festival on Without a
Uh-huh.
Box, it was top 10. Right.
Wow.
I was like, so, and we had a huge, everything sold out, everything went well. It was a huge hit.
Right.
And that's what
Yes.
I
So
was like, yeah, this
clearly filling
is
a
a
void,
necessity.
right?
I was like, there's a necessity for this. And now
Yeah.
we're in our 10th year. And, you know, it's definitely, I think, helped a lot of young up and coming filmmakers stay in the game. Because see, what happens is, imagine you're a young person that's passionate about film. And
I
you tell
remember that.
right, and you tell your parents, I'm going to school for film. They're like, no, you're not. That doesn't pay the bills. You're gonna go to school to be, you know, the doctor, lawyer, something that they know is gonna pay bills. And you're like, no, I'm gonna do it. And then you know, you go to school, you go to film or whatever, and you get your little band of friends together. You got to go shoot a short film, and you hustle up your little lunch money and all that kind of stuff, and you put it on festivals, and you don't get an any.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You start being like, maybe my parents were right,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and that's it. You're out the game.
Yeah.
But if you get into a festival in Miami called Urban Film Festival, and they celebrate you, and you get to come and invite all your friends for free screenings, and you get to come to free mass class and workshop. And you know, we make 5 different marketing elements for each filmmaker, and we're putting it out and we're boosting it, and you're boosting it, and your parents see it, and your parents' friends are getting invited, and everybody's like, man, he's a filmmaker. We're all gonna go see his movie at the Lyric Theater or the Overtown Performing Arts Center or something like that. And they come and they see it and they watch it together collectively, and everybody celebrates you. Well, now you're starting to have your village behind you, and they're supporting you, and that keeps you going. And that keeps you going. That's simple. You got to keep them going.
That's
You know?
why when I ask my guests, you know, when did they first know they were a filmmaker? And everybody really has to think about it, you know. But I think that so many times I'll talk to filmmakers and they don't even really know they're filmmakers. But I think when you have a film at a film festival and there's an in-person audience and you get to talk to the audience and they get all these things about your film that maybe you didn't even know were in there.
Right. Right.
Then it's a real connection with knowing, yes, I'm a filmmaker.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's and you know, and everybody keeps saying, you know, I have so many people coming, Marco, why don't you charge? You do so much better if you charge. Because, you know, we operate in the red. I mean, every year we lose at least minimum $20,000. Not lose, but we operate in the red, right? So you know, everybody gets behind us, like government, like, you know, GMCVB, the Visitors Bureau, the Miami DDA, mayor's office, city, state, county, all the commissioners, CRAs. Everybody throws in a couple bucks here and there. Michael Simpkins' family, everybody throws in a couple bucks. Sometimes the Miami Foundation, whoever. And it adds up to a number. But the number's never enough when you start flying people in and putting people in hotel rooms and paying for transportation shuttles and renting venues and paying for marketing. You come up a little short, you know what I'm saying? But it's not about the money on this. You know, it's about building a community, giving back, and doing just something that's just, I feel, is super cool. You know?
Oh, yes. And when you started the Urban Film Festival, did you always have it at the Lyric Theater?
Yes, we started at the Lyric Theater. We'll, as far as I'm concerned, we'll always have, you know, to me, it's so Miami, it's so Overtown, it's so, you know, so but even this year, like, so this year we're doing our youth program, we're doing our opening night film at the Lyric Theater Friday, but the Saturday and Sunday screenings of the majority of our screenings, we're actually going to move to the Silver Spot for the filmmakers experience.
Right.
Because I was building theaters in places that are not natural theaters.
Yes.
And I felt like it's time for me now to focus on the filmmakers experience, right? So we rented, I think it's the 7th floor or the 5th floor, I can't remember which floor it is, at the Silver Spot, which has 7 theaters and a restaurant and a bar. So we'll be screening 80 to 100 films in there this year. So it is also cool because everybody will be in one place for networking.
Right.
So we always had it spread out all over the place.
Going around. Although
Right.
I
So
do like that about it, I must say.
I did too. It was really beautiful because it helped activate the
Yes,
economy in Overtown and so on and so
yes,
forth. And
yes.
I'm still doing the opening night party there. I'm still doing after parties at Red Rooster. I'm doing as much as I can still. The only thing I'm doing is the screenings. We're moving them over to the and the panels as well. We're going to be moving those over to the Silver Spot just for the quality of the screenings. You know, those
Yes.
beautiful theaters.
I think that, I started coming to the festival before I moved back to Miami. And, I just loved having the Overtown experience because
Mhm.
when I left, it still didn't feel as though you could go to Overtown. And the last last time I went to the Lyric Theater.
Right.
And so I was really glad to see how much effort and life has been put in there, and that they deserve it more than
Yeah.
the neighborhood deserves it. So what then, does anybody have a question? I just want to make sure, because I can ask questions today. And so what I want to ask is, so what's your next feature film? What's your next feature film coming up?
So I'm working on a couple films, right? I'm working on a movie right now with Dion Taylor, right? And it's called what's it called Don't Open the Door. This is called Don't Open the Door, right? And it's a horror movie. We're shooting in
That's a
LA.
great title.
Yeah, Don't Open the Door, right? So it's basically about a $4 million movie. Has some pretty good actors in it. He's able to do magic, man. So Dion Taylor, are you familiar with Dion Taylor as a director?
No,
Okay, he's an up and coming, he's not even up and coming. He's done 14 movies that
wow.
I think 9 of them were theatrical,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And so he specialized kind of like a Bloomhouse type style, right?
Okay.
Where he shoots these movies that he shoots these movies that are just phenomenal movies at a low cost through his relationships and everything.
Right.
And he puts them on the box office and they go crazy in the box office. Right?
Wow.
Like he shot Meet the Browns for like under 400 grand and it made 19 million in the box office and 50 ancillary. Right.
Wow.
So and then he owns all his own content. He licenses it for the screenings. Right.
Okay.
So so I'm a fan of Dion Taylor's. He's doing this movie. I'm helping him with the raise. I'm helping him with the producing. That's going to be in LA. And I'm also working on a movie with Jonathan Majors and Gerald, who did Burning Sands. He did The Purge one. He's done a lot of cool stuff also. And that's an action movie that's going to be kind of like an Equalizer type John Wick movie where Jonathan Majors is basically having to fight his way to the top of his building, going through all these different gangs. And basically, it's like Block 52 is a fighting style that a lot of people talk about, like say more. We're very popular amongst the prison community, right? Where it's like a lot of blocking and using anything around you to fight back. So that's his fighting style. He was, special force guy, comes back, his kid's a knucklehead, kids get taken out. He's going to find out what happened and nobody wants to give me information. Now he's becoming like all out war type thing, right? And he's got to fight his way to the top to get the answers he needs. John Wick type style, right? And
Yeah.
that's being done in Atlanta. And that's also a theatrical release, right? But these are movies that I'm producing on and I'm raising. So I'm getting I'm getting a small EP credit type thing, but movies I'm developing, I'm in between Tumba La Casa, which is a Latin house party type movie. That we're shooting here locally with a bunch of Latin stars, so we have access to. My partner's Dominican, and I'm also Afro-Cuban. A lot of people don't know that I'm also Cuban as well, right?
Oh, okay. Yes, yes.
Right. So we have access to. We're friends with. We shoot a lot of huge Latin content, music videos, and have a lot of huge Latin hip hop and urban relationships. So we'll be bringing a lot of, and we're going to mix in a lot of our just American relationships as well, because kind of like a lot of cameos, it's a house party. So it's like the biggest house party in Miami type of vibe, almost like Project type thing. So it's gonna be a fun movie, comedy. So we're shooting that here, and then we're also looking at we have another one called The Art of the Interception, which is a story about Asante Samuels, who's a star football player from Broward. And it's not about so first of all, he's one of the leading interceptions defensive backs in the history of football. Even more, he has more interceptions than Deion Sanders, right? Like he's a Hall of Fame football player that's retired, and now his son also plays in the NFL.
Right.
But these guys came out of the roughest neighborhood called Deep
Oh my
Side. It was a
God.
rough neighborhood outside in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And the movie's really about how we intercepted life.
Wow.
It's not about like it's not
awesome.
about. So everybody thinks when it's like art of interception, you
Yeah.
know, the true life story of Asante Samuels, you'll think, oh, it's a football movie, and it is a football movie of a little kid who played football, but how he intercepted life and
Wow.
became successful through his mother's prayers and through the support of his community,
Right.
hard work. He was able to prevail, right? So it's kind of like a coming of age story, similar to The Reject, except now we're going to shoot a little bit bigger because coming off the success of The Reject, now we have a proven business model.
Right.
So we're able to raise a little bit more money and shoot a little bit bigger film.
Right.
You know, so The Art of the Interception is the movie that I'm doing next, that I'm going to be also funding and getting involved in, and like as like a Florida Film House. But then Marco, as a producer, I'm working on the Deion Taylor project, and then the project with Jonathan Majors.
Fantastic. And you know, we've run out of time, but we could have had this whole conversation just about self-distribution.
Yeah, a lot.
Another time.
Yes, yes.
Talk about that, you know, because that's another
a whole nother combo.
topic. And what are the dates for this year's Urban Film Festival?
August 29th through August 31st.
Oh, so are you still in the process of selecting movies, or
we're still taking submissions.
Yeah.
We have a I mean, we've you know, now the festival we get 300 to 500 submissions every year now. It's definitely gotten very popular nationally.
Right.
We try to screen 100 films, but of course it depends on the timing, because we have a certain amount of time that we can screen.
Yeah.
This year is going to be the best screening. It's our 10th year, and now that we're moving into silver, so I think that the screenings are going to be amazing. The talkbacks are going to be amazing. I have some really big executives I'm bringing in to talk to the filmmakers. So it's going to be great. Like, South Florida Film Forum was a huge hit.
Yeah,
right?
it was.
This to me is now that times something. Like, it's just, we're going to keep, because that was more panels. That was all panels. It was really not that much screening there. So now I'm bringing that level of panels along with that level of screening together.
Yes. But you always have done really good panels. I really appreciate your panels, because they're always about producing, and I'm always looking for that, because it's rare, frankly. I think
we focus on it's done by filmmakers for filmmakers, right? So it's not like, we know what you're going through, right? We stay locked in. We say through my youth program, I stay locked in.
Yes.
So it's like I'm getting the information in real time, and I'm just trying to put the topics of discussion out there that people need.
Yeah. And I always make the distinction that the majority, I think there are over 3,000 film festivals every year in America, but the majority of film festivals are not for filmmakers. Filmmakers don't really understand that. There's a really small minority of film festivals that are for filmmakers.
Right.
Film festivals are in the business of selling tickets.
Right.
That's what film festivals do. They try and bring the biggest films they can with the many stars, and they sell tickets. That's what film festivals are for.
Right. It's for profiting.
Very rare that they're for filmmakers.
Right.
So the Urban Film Festival is one that I always can recommend, because people can go and they can see movies and they can network and all of that, have fun, but they're going to learn things that they need to learn as filmmakers.
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful time for you just to grab information, knowledge, network, have a good time, enjoy, celebrate cinema, and it's all free. The only thing you got to pay for is parking. You know what I'm saying? It's like pay for parking, popcorn. If you want some popcorn. Yeah.
Well, thank you for everything you do, Marco. I'm so glad that we got to have this time.
Likewise.
Just always admire.
Thank you to everybody that's on. Appreciate you guys.
Admire everything you do, and we'll be seeing each other soon. There's something specifically I want to talk to you about. I have to talk to the filmmaker tomorrow, but I'll get back to you, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, Innocent, for keeping us going. And we'll talk soon, Marco. Happy film, everybody. Bye.
Bye.